This conference will now be recorded.
Hey everybody, Dr. Doug Smith here. It is Monday, and it is time for our uh, podcast. We do our podcast every day at 1 o'clock, Monday through Thursday. And what we're doing is we're going through the citizens petition. We're going through it page by page. It's a 49-page document, so it takes us a while to go through it, but we're going to cover it all because all the science you need to know is really pretty much in this citizens petition. Um, so. Uh, What we're doing right now is we're going through what's called factual causation, and we're presenting factual causation in the same manner as if we were in a court of law, presenting the factual causation in a toxic tort case as if we were accusing the pharmaceutical company of poisoning a victim. And we break it down and we go through with the five divisions of factual causation, and we've mentioned those before: general causation, specific causation, signature disease, biomarker of exposure, and biomarker of disease. And last show we started going through general causation, and we presented two articles. We presented the Nielsen article from 2009, and we presented the Shorbov article from 2011. And our position is that those two scientific articles, one from 2009 and one from 2011, are more than enough general causation that it should have triggered the FDA to issue a warning. Congress has assigned the FDA with the task of warning the public if there's a possibility that a drug causes disease or if a drug could potentially harm the public. That's the FDA's job. And so the FDA has what are called triggers. Okay, and if a trigger if the conditions of a trigger is met, then the FDA is required to issue a warning. And our position is that with the Nielsen article from 2009 and the Shorbov article from 2011, the conditions were met, and the FDA should have issued a warning. And what we wanted to do today was introduce a third article here. Uh, this article is by a brilliant man, and it's the article that you see right there on your screen. This is an article by Dr. Moshe Sef up at McGill University in Canada, and this is from 2011, folks. 2011. Now remember, Nielsen was 2009, Shorbov was 2011. Well, Dr. Moshe Sef was also 2011. And let me read you this quote. Okay, now there's some big words in here. We're going to go over it. Here's the quote: "The realization that long-range damage could be caused without changing the DNA sequence has important implications on the way we assess the safety of chemicals, drugs, and food, and broadens the scope of definition of toxic agents." Now, let's go through that again. The realization that long-range damage could be caused. Long-range damage. Long-range damage. That's exactly what's happened to our people. And the realization that this long-range damage could be caused without changing the DNA sequence. Now, when you change the DNA sequence, that's what's called a mutation. Okay, if you've been listening to us long enough, you realize that that was one of the two things that the FDA required a pharmaceutical company to check for before they declared a drug safe, at least from a genetic perspective. Okay, they required the pharmaceutical company to check for mutations. Mutation is a change in the DNA sequence. That's a mutation. A mutation is a change in the DNA sequence. And so what Dr. Moshe Sef is saying here is that the realization that long-range damage could be caused without changing the DNA sequence. Okay, so the FDA is requiring pharmaceutical companies to check for a change in a DNA sequence. And Dr. Moshe Sef here is saying that's not enough. Okay, you can have long range damage and not have a change in the DNA sequence. Okay, and he was right. And specifically, what he's talking about is methylation, exactly what happened to our people. So let's read this again. The realization that long range damage could be caused without changing the DNA sequence has important implications on the way we assess the safety of drugs. The safety of drugs. It actually says the safety of chemicals, drugs, and food, but it's the drugs we care about, the safety of drugs, and broadens the scope of definition of toxic agents. Okay, now, last thing I want to look at here is look at the title. Look at the title of this article by Dr. Moshe Sef. The title, it's a big title. It's a huge title. Okay, you got to get past the title, but look at the title. The implications of DNA methylation for toxicology. Towards toxicomethylomics, the toxicology of DNA methylation. Let's just go back to the beginning. The implications of DNA methylation for toxicology. Toxicology is poisoning. Toxicology is the study of poisoning. So you could read this title as the implications of DNA methylation for poisoning. That's what Dr. Moshe Sef is saying here. The implications of DNA methylation for poisoning. The toxicology of DNA methylation, the poisoning of DNA methylation. That's what he's saying here. This is 2011, folks. Okay, we're in 2025. This is 2011. Okay, this article is 14 years old. This article predicted exactly what, well, it described actually exactly what had already happened. Okay, the FDA has missed this. They did not require the pharmaceutical companies to check for methylation. They required the pharmaceutical companies to check for genetic mutations, a change in the DNA sequence. They also required the pharmaceutical companies to check for chromosomal abnormalities, which would be a change in the warehouse that the DNA is stored in. That's the way I think of it. But they didn't require the pharmaceutical companies to check for methylation. It was a swing and a miss. That's all it was, a swing and a miss. It's total whiff. Okay, it's bureaucratic incompetence. But it's a bureaucratic incompetence that has already killed over 3 million people and poisoned millions more. Okay, and that's what I wanted to cover today. So that will finish up our discussion on general causation, the three articles that we covered being Nielsen, Shorbov, and Moshe Sef. We'll pick up tomorrow with specific causation and some different articles, and we'll continue to go through this citizens petition page by page until we go through the whole thing. Remember, like us and subscribe to us. And we'll see you guys here tomorrow. My name is Dr. Doug Smith, and thank you for your time.